Hey, everybody. So I wanted to talk a little bit about plant assets and how we determine their cost. And so first of all, just as you can see on the screen, we want to talk about what a plant asset is. So plant asset, you can see on the screen, they're tangible in nature, they're actively used in operations, they're expected to benefit future periods, and they're called, usually we call them property, plant, and equipment, like on our balance sheet. Really, it includes things like equipment, buildings, things like vehicles. Okay. So I just want to go through each of those things. Tangible means it's something you can touch and feel. It's not like a copyright or a patent, which really exists just in a legal sense, but things like equipment and buildings you can actually touch. Actively used in operations means just what it sounds like. So if I'm using a piece of equipment as part of my operations, building the product I build, or a building where I do business, those are plant assets. That's opposed to, say, if I bought a building that I wasn't using for operations, I just thought it was going to appreciate in value, so I bought it as an investment. That I wouldn't define as a plant asset. I would define it as a long-term investment. It's expected to benefit future periods. So things like buildings and equipment, they're going to benefit us for more than just 1 year. Okay, we're going to use them for years and years and years. And so typically, at least, so that's what we mean when we say expected to benefit future periods. And finally, like I said, we usually call them on our balance sheet property, plant, and equipment. So the first, I guess, I don't know if it's a challenge, but something we have to figure out is, whoops, there we go. How do we figure out? Well, okay, so I'm skipping ahead. So these are the four issues that the textbook lays out. Is we need to understand how much our acquisition cost is, what it costs us to get the plant asset. Then we have to keep track of it during its useful life, which means we have to allocate the cost to the amount of time in its life, and account for any subsequent or additional expenditures that we're going to use during its life. And finally, we have to account for it when we dispose of it. So when this says four issues, it means the four things accountants have to worry about when it relates to plant assets: what it cost us, the allocation of that cost over the asset's useful life, any additional expenditures, say we had to put a new motor in the car or something like that. And finally, what do we do when we dispose of it, which means either throwing something away or selling it to someone else. So the last thing I just wanted to cover in this little video is how do we determine the cost? And the answer is really it's the purchase price, whatever we pay for it, plus any expenditures needed to get it ready for use. That could be the cost of shipping it to you, the cost of paying taxes. I'll give you an example. I own a storage business, and when I would build new buildings, rather than hire someone to build them, I would just buy a kit because I wasn't quite good enough to get all the materials myself, but the kit was still cheaper than paying someone else to do it. So the cost of purchasing the kit, the cost of having the kit shipped to me, the cost of pouring a concrete pad, and then the cost of, in my case, hiring my nephews or my sons to help me build the buildings. All of those were part of my acquisition cost. And the cost of the electrical hookups, all of that was all costs that I rolled into, or sometimes we use the term capitalized, and into that cost. I actually just made an account called building A, or whatever building I was building. And each time I spent money to buy the kit, as I was paying my nephews and my kids to help me build it, each of those was just debited to that building A account. And then when we actually put the asset into service, which for me meant when I started renting units to people, at that point, that became my acquisition cost, whatever the balance of that account was. And that's what we use for depreciation, which we'll talk about in another video. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope you have a great day. And as always, don't be afraid to reach out if I can help in some way.